Welcome and hello and greetings. It's great to have you here. I'd like to personally welcome you to this clothing optional meditation and talk. Clothing optional for you and for your sake. I am keeping at least my shirt on through the duration of this meditation and this talk. Thanks for making the time to be here. A few thank yous. I'd like to thank Ira for playing piano before class. Just magical. Thank you to our mindful movement teacher today. Also, a big thank you to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for producing this whole evening event. And as well, a thank you to Ray and Tara, who are offering mindful dialogue class after this session. It's a great way to connect with people after the session to share about your practice, observations around the talk. And if you'd like to learn more about the full smorgasbord experience here on Monday night, and that is a 6:30 mindful movement, and then this talk at 7:30, and then after the talk at around 8:50 or something like that, mindful dialogue, you can go to my Facebook page or onto my website, and it'll give you those links on how to set that up. It's nice to have the full range. Doing movement before meditation is really one of the best things around, and having that time afterward for integration and to connect with just good like-minded people. It's pretty special. A big thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for sponsoring this, and also a big thank you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, which is our host for the Monday night session. And one day we will all get back together again. I just don't know when that's going to be. If you'd like to join a mailing list, my mailing list, which will give you updates on the talks, and as well a monthly newsletter where I will inflict on you some of my photography and musings and kind of a summary of the talks for the last month and upcoming events. You can sign up there on my website. Also, this is offered freely in the tradition of dana, of generosity. The teachings are considered priceless. So therefore, according to the kind of orthodox teachings, there's no charge. They're offered freely out of love, and generosity is encouraged because that helps keep the whole ball rolling and keeps me supported in my lavish lifestyle. All my talks are available online. You can check my website, podcast, Stitcher, all that good stuff. And I just want to say, it's just so cool to have this time to be with so many people around the country and around the planet, to take time to slow down and practice together. I'm so grateful to be offering this. And tonight we'll do our meditation. We'll do a body scan, gathering, opening to flow, resting in presence. And then tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, some of what I've discovered around bringing mindfulness and sleep together. So feel free to relax. If you do fall asleep, it's probably what you need. But in the meantime, it's always good to start a meditation with a little bit of movement. So I think kind of my favorite thing is to kind of reset the spine for meditation. So rather than just jumping around doing a whole bunch of stuff, we'll just do this one particular flow. You can do this multiple times through the day as a way to move from kind of the natural collapsing that occurs when you're sitting in a chair to getting your spine upright. There's this part of this collapsing is this closing in the chest, this lengthening in the muscles through the back, and this has a way of resetting things a little bit. Hands in hitchhiker position. Point the thumbs behind you. Bring your hands a little bit behind your ears. Open your elbows out to the side. You don't want any strain here. But what you're going to do now is, if you like, draw your navel in toward your spine. It's going to activate the core. Begin to deepen your breath and try breathing in to the count of 4 and then exhaling to the count of 4, and keep that flow going. And meanwhile, begin to contract the shoulder blades close together. Do you feel that? Draw the shoulder blades down just a little bit. And focus now on your breath. You're drawing the breath up under the collarbones, inflating the upper lobes of the lungs. And on the exhalation, force all the stale air out. You can do that by drawing the navel in toward the spine, keep the contraction between the shoulder blades. And as you keep breathing, as you hold the contraction, you might feel a little bit of energy beginning to build, which is totally fine. What you're doing here is you're holding the contraction in these muscles that are chronically lengthened. And as you breathe, you are lengthening the muscles that get chronically shortened. So for the next few breaths, if you like, lift the chin slightly. Deepen your breath a little bit more. Imagine you're breathing your heart forward. And then as you're ready, reach your arms up overhead. Stretch out through the left side and the right side. And then if you like, you can bring the hands down quickly, but if you like, you can bring them down nice and slow. So close your eyes, feel the space between the fingers. Let your hands begin a descent. Let this be a concentration exercise, focusing on the movement of the hands as they flow through space. Relax the breath, relax everything around the awareness of this movement. Relax the palms and the fingers and thumbs. You might be doing this ultra slow, which is great, or you may already feel your hands on your lap, which is fine. Take a few moments just to acknowledge this turning of awareness from the outer world to the inner world. Feel your breath absolutely effortless and free-flowing. And as we transition into meditation, you might take a few moments to reflect on this word of mindfulness. My translation is non-judging awareness. There's this quality of wakefulness that it isn't for or against anything. It's just noticing. Feel the aliveness of sensation, the sounds, air touching your skin, the sense of the light beyond your closed eyes. Acknowledging taste and smell. And as you feel the aliveness of all the senses, you might take a moment to acknowledge the brain, which in this tradition is considered another sense organ. All this computing of data happening in the brain, in awareness itself. And now you might begin to just sense what it's like to begin to explore softening, relaxing and sensing, feeling your forehead smooth. And could you soften the little muscles around your eyes? And bring your awareness into the inside of your mouth. In particular, you might relax your tongue and let it fill your lower jaw. And could you allow that sense of relaxation to spread, sensing the root of the tongue, relaxing the root down into the throat, letting it spread through the jaw. Let your jaw begin to relax away from your skull. Feel the volume of your lips. Could your face soften, letting any micro expressions melt away? And sensing now the back of the head and the base of the skull. The back of the neck and the tops of the shoulders. And taking some time now just to feel the weight and the volume and the heaviness of your arms. And sensing down through the elbows. And down through the wrists. Can you feel or imagine the space between your breastbone and your spine? Can you feel or imagine the space between your navel and your spine? And sensing the lower back and the buttocks. The lower abdomen, and down through the floor of the pelvis. And feeling the weight, the length, and the volume of your legs, from the hip joints down through the knees. The knees down through the ankles. And the tops of the feet and the toes. The soles of the feet and the heels. The backs of the hands. The palms. The thumbs. And each of the fingers. And sensing this internal alchemy where you're deeply relaxed and at the same time alert. And you might now draw your attention to your breathing. Where do you feel these breaths on the inside the most predominant? Notice the sounds around you, 360 degrees, all happening by themselves. And you might take a moment to feel the palms, the fingers, the thumbs, backs of the hands, sensing any pulse or tingling or vibration. And for this next period of time now, you might use one of these anchors as your primary form of focus or concentration, the breath or sound or the feeling in the palms. When the mind naturally wanders, notice how gently you could escort your attention back to this direct, immediate experience of here and now. And that critical moment in your meditation can be when you notice the mind is lost in a narrative or far away. Can you acknowledge that without judgment, but as if you're training a puppy and guiding your awareness back to the here and now? Each time you notice the mind is again lost in a narrative, gliding into the future or the past, you can remember that this is a practice of letting go. Is it possible to let go of that thought form and to re-arrive? Just this sense what could soften or relax right now. And drawing your attention back to your anchor. How intimately can you feel these next few breaths on the inside? How awake can you be to the sounds around you, the feeling in the palms? And you may find it helpful to keep returning to your anchor as a way of gathering your attention, of calming the mind and the nervous system. And you may also find a natural desire to widen or broaden your awareness a bit. And kind of relaxing your focus on your anchor and beginning to turn your attention to what is changing. Noticing the stream of sensation, the stream of thought forms, the stream of mood or emotion, even the stream of different states of consciousness coming and going. And here again, if it feels right for you, can you sense what it means to take the seat of the witness, where you are the observer of change and allowing things to be as they are? And here again, when you notice the mind lost in thought, let yourself take your time to re-arrive. What could soften or relax right now? And take some time to revisit your anchor to sustain attention here on breath or sound or feeling. A sense of present moment awareness here at this particular point. And then if it feels right, again, you can broaden your attention, opening to this perception of the stream or the flow of phenomena from this perspective of the observer or the witness. From time to time, you might inquire, what exactly is happening right now? And can you name it in a word or a two? And then you might inquire, can I let this be? In these remaining 5 minutes or so, you might again refresh your practice. And you might like to relax or soften your jaw and the tongue and the lips. And sense that space between the navel and the spine. Could you soften and feel here? Feeling the lower back and the buttocks, the floor of the pelvis. And the soles of the feet and the heels. And the backs of the hands, the palms, fingers, and thumbs. And deeply relaxed, and at the same time alert. And you might sense your anchor, the breath or sound or feeling in the palms, and note now how intimately you can sense and perceive the aliveness here. And you might, if you like, widen your awareness to embrace all that is changing, to sense this seat of the witness, of the observer. And you might, in these remaining minutes, relax any sense of concentration or doing or manipulation, and allow yourself to open more into presence, into being, relaxing all technique. What could relax or soften or let go right now? What could soften, relax, or let go even more? Where do you feel the breath inside the most predominant right now? And you might like to very gently deepen and lengthen and smooth out your breath. As I breathe in, I'm aware breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware breathing out. And with your eyes closed, let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right. And sense some movement from the inside. And take some time now to let your whole body begin to move and stretch in any way that feels good for you. You might like to reach your arms up overhead once again. Stretch up to the left side. Stretch up to the right side. Let your body move in any way that feels good. Welcome back. It's so great to have this time with so many folks gathering here online. Also, just a reminder that this is streamed both on Facebook and YouTube and on the IMCW website, imcw.org. When I first started this podcast, I started giving talks and posting them through iTunes and, getting them out there. I occasionally would get some emails from people, mostly appreciating, almost all. And I got one particular email from someone in New Zealand, and I was quite struck by what an exotic email address. And this person said, I just want you to know I love your podcast. Nothing puts me to sleep faster than listening to you. And I thought, hey, I'm here to serve, and I'm really, really glad it works this way. And I know other people also use my talks to fall asleep. And Guy, I'm talking about you, among others. Sleep is our topic for tonight. And this is something I've gotten kind of a little bit over the top OCD passionate about. And it's interesting about sleep because it's in the context of, in the language of the Buddha, of Pali, the original language, of virya, which is energy, vitality. And it's an integral part of not only spiritual practice, but life, to maintain and sustain and cultivate energy, to stay awake and stay focused on what's most important to you. It has all the ways you manage your energy, which includes your sleep. And sleep has been a big issue for me, and I know it's a big issue for a lot of people. So what I'd like to talk about and potentially geek out on a little bit tonight are really first the consequences of not sleeping well, which is sort of what woke me up, literally, to this. How sleep is really an integral part of your life, but also about your spiritual practice. And then to talk about what you can do, first on the external things you can do, and I'll share with you my favorite toys and external stuff. But then, most important, the internal stuff, the things that you can do internally when you find yourself unable to sleep. I want to assure you I am not a sleep expert, but I have been pretty passionate around exploring what works best. So just to say, as I'm not an expert, what I'm about to share may be filled with misinterpretations and dramatic distortions, but I've done my best to be clear and share with you what's been successful for me. You know, one of the most popular worldwide torture techniques is sleep deprivation. And I imagine you've had times when you have been deprived of sleep and have been able to watch what happens, not just in your mind, but in your physiology. Last summer, I had a really, really bad infection. And I just could not sleep. And day after day, I watched this kind of this degradation of my mind. I was moving in and out of kind of hypnagogic states, dreamlike states, and then waking, and I could imagine the dementia-like quality of mind, and it actually cultivated a little more empathy for my parents, who both had dementia later in their lives. Just the confusion, the inability to focus. We've all touched into that a little bit. And there are striking long-term effects around not getting enough sleep. Hypertension, heart attack and stroke, weight gain, obesity, diabetes, depression, anxiety, decreased fertility, psychiatric disorders, immune system deficiency, brain function, memory loss. And what really struck me and really brought this home for me, particularly watching my parents in dementia, my father in Alzheimer's, is seeing what happens in the brain when you don't get the right amount of sleep. This one small study said that losing just one night of sleep led to an increase in beta amyloid, which is the protein associated with impaired brain function and Alzheimer's disease. The results suggested that sleep deprivation may increase the risk for beta amyloid buildup in the brain. And there are all kinds of studies out there that are linking sleep deprivation and dementia. And sleep deprivation, how sleep deprivation can accelerate Alzheimer's brain damage. So all the bells went off. My father had Alzheimer's, had all the classic sleep issues. He could not sleep well. He would, sleep for a few hours and wake up and be up all night. And I don't want that to happen to me, because my sleep was getting screwed up for quite a while. So learning how this could work, the question for me was, what can I do to turn this around in my life? One night of sleeplessness, you may notice this if you don't sleep well. Quite often you have dark circles under your eyes. It's got a fluid accumulation. Sometimes you'll have like random hunger pangs because it changes the way your body interprets hunger. Feeling unfocused, forgetful, slow reaction times, Your immune system is compromised. That's when you can catch colds. So I'd been waking up between 2 and 4, not able to get back to sleep, trying to make up for it with napping during the day. And then I noticed I started over caffeinating because I was attached to feeling clear and then getting into the cycle of over caffeination and having to deal with that. So I decided to prioritize it and go for it. Whatever I had to do to retool my lifestyle and whatever technologies were out there, I wanted to learn them and employ them. So my lifestyle shift was not as dramatic as many, but I still had a lot to dial in. And what I'd like to do is tell you about what I've done and some of the best practices, and share a little bit with you about what might be helpful for you. Because if you can dial in these factors and start sleeping better, it will change the quality of your life. I have no doubt about it. I've always been an early riser. I grew up on a farm, so up early, do your chores before the sun comes up, get ready, get on the school bus. And then I lived in a boarding school for 4 years, where if you wanted to eat, you had to be there at 6:30 for breakfast. All through college, I co-managed a gigantic farm in the Midwest, was responsible for hundreds of pigs that we raised. So I'd be up at 4:30 or 5, way before sunrise, working with the animals, getting ready for the day. And wherever I was, and I tried not to be behind the wheel of a car, at 8:30, I was out. Then I lived in an ashram, lived in a spiritual community for a couple of decades, where pretty much you're in bed by 9 and you're up at 5 and ready for a new day. So, I've had a pretty amazing schedule that's worked really, really well for me. And finding your sleep patterns is really, really important. But then it's one thing to know your sleep patterns, but then the discipline to start living your lifestyle in a way that really supports you. So for me, learning how to manage my energy really meant I needed to make some changes here. I needed to ensure, because I would wake up at 5 every morning no matter what. The only control I had over my sleep was when I went to bed. And that took some shifting. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the sleep stages. And I found this helpful. I hope you do too. And realizing that you can't skip any of these stages in sleep. If you want to get into the deeper levels of sleep, you've got to go through these particular steps. I just want to say that recognizing when you're sleep deprived can be very, very helpful. There was a time when I began to, in my practice of living in spiritual community, when I began to recognize that my catastrophic over-emotional thinking process was oftentimes linked to when I didn't sleep well. And I made this determination of not to believe my thoughts when I was tired. It kind of helped. So before we dive into the rest of this stuff, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of my information has come from Dr. Peter Attia, who's got a podcast called The Attia Drive. And it's about quality of life and longevity. And what really turned me on was a 3-hour interview he did with Dr. Matthew Walker, who's head of the Berkeley Sleep Study. And if you can find that, I highly recommend it. It's very entertaining, very engaging. And then all the work that Matthew Walker has done has been very, very interesting. So it kind of breaks down to what's called non-rapid eye movement, which is kind of quiet sleep. And then rapid eye movement, or REM, which is active sleep. And the first thing is when you begin to sort of settle in, all kinds of things can happen when you fall asleep, of course. You can have strange sensations. There are what are called hypnagogic hallucinations, where you feel like you're falling or you hear someone calling your name. There's something called the myoclonic jerk, which is where you just move for no reason, which is also quite common. So what happens when you sleep is you're moving from these high amplitude, theta waves, and for like 5 or 10 minutes, you're sort of going into a drifting place. And if someone were to sort of wake you, you'd probably say you were awake. You weren't even asleep. But as you begin to settle in, then what will happen is you move into the second stage where you'll be less aware of your surroundings. Your body temperature will drop. Your breathing and your heart rate becomes more regular. And for about 20 minutes, you'll be in this phase. And here there'll be kind of rapid rhythmic brain activity that are called sleep spindles. Your body temperature continues to go down. Your heart rate continues to go down. And about 50% of your time when you're asleep, you're kind of hanging out in this state. And then if the forces of nature are with you, you'll begin to move into the next level of sleep. And this is where your muscles will relax even more. Your blood pressure, your breathing rate drop. This is where you begin to move into your deepest sleep. And the delta brainwaves begin to kick in here. And you'll become less responsive, and the noises and the activity, they may not generate any response. So, if there's someone in the room and they slam a door, you won't even hear it because you'll be so deep. And you're in this transition between light sleep and what's considered really, really deep sleep. And then this fourth stage of sleep is pretty wild. In the fourth stage, your brain actually starts to become more active. Your body becomes more relaxed and you actually become immobilized. It's almost like you're paralyzed. Your eyes start to move more rapidly. There's more dreaming, happening here. You have lots of rapid eye movement. Your respiration actually increases. The brain activity increases. And about 20% of your time is here. And this is where all kinds of amazing stuff happens. This is where memory consolidation begins to happen, where learning and connecting dots and your experience happen. And most importantly, this is where, and I'm pretty sure it's proven, this is where this sort of like brain cleanup occurs. And this is my understanding. I'm not totally clear, but my understanding is that the cerebral spinal fluid, which is always moving through, that in this stage, it's almost as if the brain shrinks a little bit. There's more room for the cerebral spinal fluid to flow through. I'm not sure, I'm not sure that's correct, but there is some strong indication here that that it's here where the brain basically gets flushed, where the beta amyloids and the plaque that build up, they get cleaned here. And so you'll go through about 4 or 5 of these sleep cycles of sort of relaxing, moving deeper, that in-between state, and then you'll cycle down into that fourth stage of sleep. And chances are you can sense those cycles during the night where you're awake and then you go back down. And how I try to imagine it, because what happens for me is I wake up and then I stay awake and then I start hallucinating. I'll never fall asleep again. But I kind of see it as like a porpoise, It comes up to the surface, kind of looks around, and then it goes back down, back into the depths. That fourth stage of sleep is something that we miss unless we can really build in really healthy sleep hygiene. And this is where I started to really turn my focus. What are the best practices for sleep? And you may know these, but I'm going to share them with you anyway. Going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even after a bad night's sleep and even on the weekend. Super, super helpful. That's where my time of living in a very regimented ashram environment or being on a farm was so helpful. Was you just go to bed at the same time. Your body gets into that rhythm. Keeping your bedroom cool, about 65 degrees. It'll help you to cool off, because one of the indicators of going into sleep is your core body temperature drops. So that's very, very helpful. Transitioning to sleep, like an hour before bedtime, to dim the lights, turn off the screens, really, really helpful, really, really difficult. Refraining from alcohol is huge. Alcohol is considered a sedative, and sedation is not sleep. So it can block your REM dream sleep, which is a really important part of the cycle. And as well to avoid caffeine after like 1 p.m. And as well, just to notice if you can't sleep, the best practice suggested now is to get out of bed, do something quiet, and then try to get back to bed when you feel the slightest urge. And then finally, napping late in the day to try to avoid that if you can. Those are some of the basic practices, but I've also found that eating earlier in the day, not eating too soon before you go to bed, has been another huge factor for me. So, externally, what can you do externally? Well, this is where I just love to geek out, and I'll share with you some of the things that I've done that have really been cool. And I just have to say up front that all these toys and stuff maybe aren't necessary. It is ultimately about working your internal process, and I'm going to talk about that. But in the meantime, here are some of the tech toys that have been really helpful for me. It's called the Aura Ring, and this is recommended by Peter Attia and Matthew Walker. It's considered the most accurate sleep tracker there is, and I'm just taking it off now. And I don't know if you can see, but you can see these diodes that are there. And what they do is they measure your heart rate variability, they measure your temperature, and it's on all the time. It's got like a 6-day battery or something like that. And the basic rule of thumb is what you can manage, you can measure. So last night, I slept for 6 hours and 50 minutes. My sleep efficiency was 85%. My resting heart rate was 50. I had an hour and 55 minutes of REM sleep, of the rapid eye movement. That's 28%. And I had 53 minutes of the deep sleep, like that deepest sleep, which is about 13%. It took me 17 minutes to fall asleep. So why is that important? Well, what happens is you're getting immediate feedback as to your activities. And I've noticed, and I've really noticed the impact of eating late. So I really try to have at least 3 hours on an empty stomach before I go to bed. But sometimes I'm just starving, or I'll eat a little bit something a little bit later. And then I check my app in the morning and I get this little thing saying, did you eat something late last night? Because your temperature didn't drop until here. It's a little scary and amazingly helpful to get that mirror of the consequence of action, the karma, if you will. So I'm part of a study now working where I fill out, every morning I fill out the symptoms that I might have. And what they're doing is, in the studies, they're looking for indicators of early detection of issues that might arise. And in particular, they're noticing, can they catch the symptoms of the coronavirus before you realize you have it? Because quite often there'll be an elevated temperature before you're aware of it. So I have found this to be a tremendous asset for myself. And there are other sleep trackers out there, but to kind of get the mirror of the effect of your actions. And it's interesting because on some of the forums for the Aura Ring, it's OURA, you'll see people say like, oh, that's it. No more red wine in the evening, because they can just see the immediate impact. So the second geeked out thing that I'm experimenting with, which has been highly recommended by many people, it is a water-cooled mattress cover. It's called the Ooler, OOLER. And again, what this will do, because I noticed there are many times I would wake up overheated, and I kind of kick off the covers. I'd wake up in a sweat because I was cold, I had too many blankets, and that would just wreck my sleep. One of the things that helps you to fall asleep is when your core body temperature drops. So this is basically a mattress cover that has cool water, and you set the temperature, and it helps you to lower the body temperature and it has an impact. And I've noticed it's made a big impact for me. Many people have said this is the one thing that's really shifted things for them a lot. So there's that. And then the counterbalance to a cool mattress cover is using what's called a gravity blanket. I was very skeptical about this, but this is like a 15 or 20 or 25 pound blanket. The weight of the blanket is a percentage of your body weight. There's no hard data on this, but many people feel like they feel held, they feel kind of comforted, like the weight of the blanket, some people say, is almost like when my body moves less, my mind moves less. And I found that to be helpful. I have a 20-pound blanket that I use, so I'm kind of cooled off. The heavy blanket kind of makes a difference. Finally, no, not finally, there's more. Many people have found like listening to audio has been really helpful. So I've tried some of the apps that are kind of designed to take you into a sleep state. Because what happens is when you're transitioning from like the linear rational mind to more like the open kind of hypnagogic states that are the precursor to deep sleep, there's sort of a randomization of thoughts. You may have noticed, like there's these disconnected, disjointed thoughts. It's like the mind is kind of like off gassing. And so there are some podcasts that you can listen to where someone will tell you a story and it's completely disjointed. So be like, I was walking around the road yesterday and I saw this red barn, and I thought to myself, boy, a red barn. My uncle once talked about having a barn when he was a kid, and he grew up in Kansas, and in Kansas they've got really cold winters in Kansas, and it's hard to keep the chickens warm in the winter, and a lot of people really like eggs for breakfast. It's just this disjointed thing. At first, I found it really helpful because you're tracking the story and you realize you can't track it. It takes you into sleep. But those moments when I couldn't sleep and I'm trying to follow the story and I would get more and more frustrated and angry. Like, what about the barn? Let's talk about the barn. Go back to the barn. So that didn't work so well for me. Sometimes what I do is I'll choose a podcast that's interesting, but it's very kind of even. So I listen a lot to the In Our Time podcast, the BBC podcast where they go back and they have like 3 college professors who talk about a particular moment in history. There's one on philosophy and there's one on history. So I'll kind of hear that. It'll be engaging. And sometimes if I can't sleep, I learn something. And other times it's just enough for my mind to track, and then to kind of let go. There have been some times when I'll wake up in the morning and I'll say to Tara, I know everything there is to know about coffee, its effect on colonial development and slavery. Someone I know, John, has said that he finds that on Insight Timer there are some programs that use binaural beats that have been really helpful for him. And if you're not familiar with dual binaural beat technology, you're basically listening to 2 separate tones in each ear. And the differential between those 2 tones, as you're listening, it forces your brain to listen as a whole, and it can usher in brainwave shifts. That can be super helpful. So dual binaural beats can be helpful. So all this outer technical stuff has been very helpful. But one of the most helpful things is to kind of get the feedback as to what am I doing and how is it showing up. And it's really forced some lifestyle changes for me, some quite unexpected. When I realized that eating anything or drinking anything too late would impact my sleep, either having to get up and go and pee or just digesting food that was still in my system, I stopped eating, late. So if I go to bed at 9, I would try to not have anything at the latest at 6, quite often at 5. And so what would happen, I realized, was I'd stop eating at 5, and then I would get up the next day and I might have some caffeinated tea, but then I wouldn't have my smoothie until later in the morning. Suddenly I found, oh, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm going maybe 16 hours a day without food, which is a phenomenal thing that you can do for your body. And both Tara and I are finding like, wow, we just feel fantastic because your body really has time to empty out and clear. It's also affected how I exercise, recognizing there's a direct correlation between my exercise and recognizing its impact on how I sleep. But if I exercise too late, then I can see how that affects the temperature drop, etc. So these are all the outward things you can do. These are the toys. But really, ultimately, it's about the inner work. And I have to say, I've had vast improvement in my sleep, but I'm still working on it. I still have some nights when I wake up and I can't get back to sleep. So I'd like to take the rest of our time here, which is not that long, to talk a little bit about some of the internal strategies that can be really helpful. The first Buddhist meditation retreat I went on which was with S.N. Goenka. 10-day retreat, 10 hours a day, very, very strict, very orthodox retreat. The first night he said something that had big impact for me ever since. He said, if you can't fall asleep in the middle of the night, do the body scan where you're kind of moving through your body sort of piece by piece, just sensing what's there from the top of the head to the tip of the toes, and then begin again. And he said, you may find it'll help you fall asleep. But even if it doesn't help you fall asleep, you may find yourself remarkably refreshed in the morning. And on that retreat, I had a number of sleepless nights, and so I just practiced. It's a very powerful meditation technique, just scanning through the body piece by piece. And there were two things that occurred. One was, I noticed that anytime I brought my attention to the sensations, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't hallucinating about what a terrible day it would be the next day. So I'm not only calming the body, calming the mind, I'm really diverting my mind from moving into catastrophizing about sleep. So you might notice when you're doing that body scan of just sensing touch points in the body, the shifts that can occur. Andrew Weil has what he calls the 4-7-8 breath, where you inhale 4, you will hold for 7, and then you exhale 8. And when you exhale, it's with an open mouth, kind of a. So you're, in fact, we'll do it a little bit faster because it takes time to ramp down into it. But if you like, let's just try this. If you like, you can close your eyes. We'll just do this for a minute or so. Close your eyes. Inhale fully. Exhale. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just take a moment just to rest. Can you feel any imprint, any effect? Some people swear this technique helps them to fall asleep really, really fast. I find for myself, when I'm trying too hard to do it right or get the ratio right, it actually gets me a little anxious. But it's a very, very cool thing just to keep in mind. Where as you inhale and then you hold, and on the exhalation, it's a letting go, it's a falling away, and sometimes it can feel like you're just sort of like dropping into like deeper and deeper levels of awareness. As I've done a little research for this talk, there was a beautiful article where someone talked about a visualization that in some Tibetan traditions that are kind of seen as an insomnia cure visualization. And I actually tried this one the other night. It was pretty cool. So if you like, you can close your eyes. It's not very long. I'm gonna read this to you, and then you can kind of get a sense of what it feels like. So imagine yourself with your eyes closed. Take 3 deep breaths. And allow your mind just to kind of flow along with this description. Imagine it is night, deep in the forest. A raging river rushes through a narrow gorge, roaring incessantly. At the top of the gorge, there is a coarse rope ladder descending from the rim halfway down to a small and cozy cave in the canyon wall. Inside is a crackling campfire burning, illuminating, and warming the rough stone walls of the caves. You are sitting before the fire, wrapped in a sheepskin cloak, cuddling a baby goat nestled into your arms. Even as you hear the roaring river, you hold the kid close and feel content. And then if you like, you can deepen your breath. That kind of worked for me. And what I find is these techniques, they work really, really well for a while, and they kind of lose their, they lose their vibrancy. But that whole idea of like it's night, there's a rushing river, and you're in this little cave with a fire, and you're just nurturing this little baby goat in your arms. It's pretty cozy. It's a shift. A couple other things that I found really helpful. Just as in the body scan, where you're just sensing the body, I find sometimes the open focus meditation is very, very helpful. I have a number of these in my podcast if you want to check. Because we have so little time, it's kind of feeling the space inside your body. So let me give you a little sample of this. If you like, again, you can close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And just sense, can you imagine the space between your forehead and the back of your head? Can you feel or imagine the space inside the sinus cavities in your head? Can you imagine the space inside your mouth? Can you imagine the space inside your throat? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your lungs? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your thumbs? Just take a moment to sense over this just few minutes if there's any shift inside. And if you like, you can open your eyes, or if you're asleep, you may want to just stay with it. So these are just some of the techniques that are really helpful, to scan the body, either point by point or the open focus technique of feeling the space inside parts of the body. To use your breath as a way to kind of concentrate and calm and let go. And to try the visualization, of like surrounded by this rushing river above you in a cozy cave, cuddling, nurturing a little baby goat. You can substitute whatever baby animal you like. Another thing that oftentimes I will do is when I can't sleep and I begin to feel the catastrophizing going on, like hallucinating what a terrible day it's going to be, is just to remind myself other people feel this too. Other people right now are awake and struggling to sleep. Other people right now are feeling anxious. And this can be a very powerful segue into metta or loving kindness. That you can just move through different people in your lives, bring them close into your awareness and just wish them well. Imagine them safe, imagine them happy, and imagine that you can just radiate that out effortlessly. It can be a very, very helpful technique. But then there are times when nothing works, and I know these well. And this is where it becomes a really rich and deep part of your practice. Like when you're doing a meditation retreat and you're just hours and hours and hours a day of just watching the mind in all its different states. This is where we call on non-judging awareness. And I notice that quite often when I can't sleep, just as when you're meditating, you begin to recognize your top 10, like the top 10 stories that just keep cycling through again and again and again. You may begin to notice these when you can't sleep. I have a very old family of origin story that just comes cycling through, and you can sort of hear the violins come in as I go into self-pity. It's like clockwork. There are particular fantasies very traditional fantasies I'll go into at different times, and different stories I go into. And just as we are practicing non-judging awareness, sometimes it's helpful to look closer at those stories. So what am I believing in this story? Is it true? And can I bring some empathy? Can I bring some kindness to this? It can be very, very helpful. In the Tibetan tradition, they speak of the bardos, and the bardos are these states of consciousness that they're just sort of, they're these states that you kind of can't get out of. It feels like you're trapped in these mind states. And again, quite often, these will show up in sleep, where you'll find yourself caught in anxiety, caught in worry, and strategizing how you're going to fix this problem. Judith Simmer Brown wrote a beautiful article in Tricycle magazine around working with insomnia, and it was from her that I got that Tibetan visualization. And she said, part of my practice now is to give up trying to go back to sleep. No breathing exercises, no sleep-inducing imagery, just lie here resting and very still, permitting my mind in its various tendencies. And this can be a very powerful and sacred part of the practice. She goes on to say, somewhere in this very moment, babies are born, fathers are dying, mothers are grieving. Yet pervading all is a groundless awareness, delicate and strong at the same time. Everything becomes we, a beating heart with a transparent, radiant smile, and we are awake. So when it comes to taking on sleep as a spiritual practice, it kind of comes down to everything else as a spiritual practice, work as a spiritual practice, relationship as a spiritual practice. It's your capacity to call on these two wings of awareness. The first is wisdom, to recognize what's happening. The second is compassion, to explore how you can be with it. And just like anything, what I have found in my exploration of my relationship with sleep is that there are some external factors that I actually have control over, and there are quite a few. And it becomes a discipline. There's a lot of resilience in changing your lifestyle to a lifestyle that's more wholesome, where sleep is more natural and more organic. There's sacrifice, there's giving up. There's giving up alcohol, caffeine, late naps, giving up staying up late if that's what your sleep cycle calls for. There's looking at the technology, all the geeky toys out there that can give you the feedback to help you kind of refine. And that's where this Aura ring has made such a difference, because now I just see the impact when I'm off kilter. Exploring everything you can do externally to support you, but ultimately what it comes down to is the attitude and the mind. How you can, again, be aware of what's here and call on a way that you can hold it and be with it. I'll be sharing some more meditations and practices if you'd like to try some of these techniques a little bit more extended, and I hope to have them up on my podcast sometime soon. But you can remember that some of the techniques are very, very helpful, and they all have in common is coming back to the here and now. When the mind is under duress, it moves into the past and the future, and it catastrophizes. When you are present in the here and now, you're calling on a sense of calming, a sense of present moment awareness. So whether you do a body scan or open focus or explore a breathing technique that might help you to calm, ultimately this is all about being present, being awake to what is here, and managing our energy in a way that supports us. That when your cup is full and overflowing, life looks very, very different. Sometimes people say this stuff is so self-indulgent and so narcissistic, and I feel it's our responsibility to fill our cup where we feel alive and vibrant. Because when we feel alive and vibrant, that's when we can serve from a place of fullness, where we can recognize what's most important and give ourselves to it fully. I hope you have found some of this stuff helpful. I will work to include some links, probably either on Facebook and YouTube, some links that you might find helpful if you'd like to explore some of the technology. And I'll have some more practices up for you if you're interested sometime in the near future. So thank you so much for your time and attention. May you sleep loose. May you feel alive and vibrant to your life and all that you are called to. Thank you so much.